Saturday, 3rd of October, 1942. Dear Kitty, everybody teased me quite a bit yesterday because I lay down on the bed next to Mr. Van Daan. At your age, shocking, and other remarks along those lines. Silly, of course. I'd never want to sleep with Mr. Van Daan the way they mean. Yesterday, Mother and I had another run-in, and she really kicked up a fuss. She told Daddy all my sins and started to cry, which made me cry too, and I already had such an awful headache. I finally told Daddy that I love him more than I do Mother, to which he replied that it was simply a passing phase, but I don't think so. I simply can't stand Mother, and I have to force myself not to snap at her all the time and to stay calm when I'd rather slap her across the face. I don't know why I've taken such a terrible dislike to her. Daddy says that Mother isn't feeling well or has a headache, I should volunteer to help her, but I'm not going to because I don't love her and I don't enjoy doing it. I can imagine Mother dying someday, but Daddy's death seems inconceivable. It's very mean of me, but that's how I feel. I hope Mother will never read this or anything else I've written. I've been allowed to read more grown-up books lately. Eva's Youth by Nico van Zuchtelen is currently keeping me busy. I don't think there's much of a difference between this and books for teenage girls. Eva thought that children grew on trees, like apples, and that the stork plucked them off the tree when they were ripe and brought them to the mothers. But her girlfriend's cat had kittens, and Eva saw them coming out of the cat, so she thought cats laid eggs and hatched them like chickens, and that mothers who wanted a child also went upstairs a few days before their time to lay an egg and brood on it. After the babies arrived, the mothers were pretty weak from all that squatting. At some point, Eva wanted a baby too. She took a woolen scarf and spread it on the ground so the egg could fall into it, and then she squatted down and began to push. She clucked as she waited, but no egg came out. Finally, after she'd been sitting for a long time, something did come, but it was a sausage instead of an egg. Eva was embarrassed. She thought she was ill. Funny, isn't it? There are also parts of Eva's Youth that talk about women selling their bodies on the street and asking loads of money. I'd be mortified in front of a man like that. In addition, it mentions Eva's menstruation. Oh, I'll long to have my period, then I'll be really grown up. Daddy is grumbling again and threatening to take away my diary. Oh, horror of horrors. From now on, I'm going to hide it. Anne Frank. Wednesday the 7th of October, 1942. I imagine that I've gone to Switzerland. Daddy and I sleep in one room while the boys and cousins Bernard and Stefan study is turned into a sitting room where I can receive visitors. As a surprise, they bought new furniture for me, including a tea table, a desk, armchairs and a divan. Everything's simply wonderful. After a few days, Daddy gives me 150 guilders, converted into Swiss money of course, but I'll call them guilders, and tells me to buy everything I think I'll need, all for myself. Later on, I get a guilder a week, which I can also use to buy whatever I want. I set off with Bernard, and I buy, and this is where she lists all different things. So if you can see, she's got a big inventory of all the different sorts of things and how much they cost. So I won't read them all, but for example, she talks about she'd like new shoes, silk stockings, school dresses, nice dresses, a winter coat and a summer coat, 2 handbags, an ice skating outfit, a pair of skates, 1 case that has powder, skin cream, foundation, cream, cleansing cream, suntan lotion, cotton wool, first aid kit, rouge, lipstick, eyebrow pencil, bath salts, bath powder, eau de cologne, soap and a powder puff. And she also wants to buy books. So that kind of gives us a little bit of insight into what she finds important. Friday, 9th of October, 1942. Dearest Kitty, today I have nothing but dismal and depressing news to report. Our many Jewish friends and acquaintances are being taken away in droves. The Gestapo is treating them very roughly and transporting them into cattle trucks to Westerbork, the big camp in Drenthe to which they're sending all the Jews. Miek told us about someone who'd managed to escape from there. It must be terrible in Westerbork. The people get almost nothing to eat, much less to drink, as water is available only 1 hour a day. And there's only 1 lavatory and sink for several thousand people. Men and women sleep in the same room, and women and children often have their heads shaved. Escape is almost impossible. Many people look Jewish, and they're branded by their shorn heads. If it's that bad in Holland, What must it be like in those faraway and uncivilized places where the Germans are sending them? We assume that most of them are being murdered. The English radio says they're being gassed. Perhaps that's the quickest way to die. I feel terrible. Miep's accounts of these horrors are so heartrending, and Miep is also very distraught. The other day, for instance, the Gestapo deposited an elderly, crippled Jewish woman on Miep's doorstep while they set off to find a car. The old woman was terrified of the glaring searchlights and the guns firing at the English planes overhead. Yet Miep didn't dare let her in. Nobody would. The Germans are generous enough when it comes to punishment. Bep is also very subdued. Her boyfriend is being sent to Germany. Every time the planes fly over, she's afraid they're going to drop their entire bomb load on Bertus's head. Jokes like, oh, don't worry, they can't all fall on him, or one bomb is all it takes, are hardly appropriate in this situation. Bertus is not the only one being forced to work in Germany. Trainloads of young men depart daily. Some of them try to sneak off the train when it stops at a small station, but only a few manage to escape unnoticed and find a place to hide. But that's not the end of my lamentations. Have you ever heard the term hostages? That's the latest punishment for saboteurs. It's the most horrible thing you can imagine. Leading citizens, innocent people, are taken prisoner to await their execution. If the Gestapo can't find the saboteur, they simply grab 5 hostages and line them up against the wall. You read the announcements of their death in the paper, where they're referred to as fatal accidents. Fine specimens of humanity, those Germans, and to think I'm actually one of them. No, that's not true. Hitler took away our nationality long ago, and besides, there are no greater enemies on earth than the Germans and the Jews. Yours, Anne. Wednesday the 14th of October 1942. Dear Kitty, I'm terribly busy. Yesterday I began translating a chapter from La Belle Nivonnaise and writing down vocabulary words. Then I worked on an awful maths problem and translated 3 pages of French grammar besides. Today, French grammar and history. I simply refuse to do that wretched maths every day. Daddy thinks it's awful too. I'm almost better at it than he is, though in fact neither of us is any good, so we always have to call on Margot's help. I'm also working away at my shorthand, which I enjoy. Of the 3 of us, I've made the most progress. I've read The Storm Family. It's quite good, but it doesn't compare with Jupe de Hurle. Anyway, the same words can be found in both books, which makes sense because they're written by the same author. Sissy van Marksveld is a terrific writer. I'm definitely going to let my own children read her books. Moreover, I've read a lot of Corner plays. I like the way he writes. For example, Hedwig, The Cousin from Bremen, The Governess, The Green Domino, etc. Mother, Margot and I are once again the best of friends. It's actually a lot nicer that way. Last night, Margot and I were lying side by side in my bed. It was incredibly cramped, but that's what made it fun. She asked if she could read my diary once in a while. Parts of it, I said, and asked about hers. She gave me permission to read her diary as well. The conversation turned to the future, and I asked what she wanted to be when she was older. But she wouldn't say and was quite mysterious about it. I gathered it had something to do with teaching. Of course, I'm not absolutely sure, but I suspect it's something along those lines. I really shouldn't be so nosy. This morning I lay on Peter's bed after first having chased him off it. He was furious. I don't care. He might consider being a little more friendly to me from time to time. After all, I did give him an apple last night. I once asked Margot if she thought I was ugly. She said that I was okay and I had nice eyes. A little vague, don't you think? Well, until next time. Anne Frank. P.S. This morning we all took turns on the scale. Margot now weighs 9 stone 10 6 pounds. Mother 9 stone 10. Father 11 stone 1. Anne 6 stone 12. Peter 10 stone 8. Mrs. Van Daan 8 stone 5. Mr. Van Daan 11 stone 11. In the 3 months since I've been here, I've gained 19 pounds. A lot, huh? Tuesday, 20th of October 1942. Dearest Kitty, my hand's still shaking, even though it's been 2 hours since we had the scare. I should explain that there are 5 fire extinguishers in the building. The office staff stupidly forgot to warn us that the carpenter, or whatever he's called, was coming to fill the extinguishers. As a result, we didn't bother to be quiet until I heard the sound of hammering on the landing across the bookcase. I immediately assumed it was the carpenter and went to warn Bep, who was eating lunch, that she couldn't go back downstairs. Father and I stationed ourselves at the door so we could hear when the man had left. After working for about 15 minutes, he laid his hammer and some other tools on our bookcase, or so we thought, and banged on our door. We turned white with fear. Had he heard something after all, and did he now want to check out this mysterious-looking bookcase? It seemed so, since he kept knocking, pulling, pushing and jerking on it. I was so scared I nearly fainted at the thought of this total stranger managing to discover our wonderful hiding place. Just when I thought my days were numbered, we heard Mr. Kleiman's voice saying, "Open up, it's me." We opened the door at once. What had happened? The hook fastening the bookcase had got stuck, which is why no one had been able to warn us about the carpenter. After the man had left, Mr. Kleiman came to get Bep, but couldn't open the bookcase. Can't tell you how relieved I was. In my imagination, the man I thought was trying to get inside the secret annex had kept growing and growing until he'd become not only a giant, but also the cruelest fascist in the world. Phew. Fortunately, everything worked all right, at least this time. We had lots of fun on Monday. Miep and Jan spent the night with us. Margot and I slept in Father's and Mother's room for the night so the geezers could have our beds. The menu was drawn up in their honour, and the meal was delicious. The festivities were briefly interrupted when Father's lamp caused a short circuit and we were suddenly plunged into darkness. What were we to do? We did have fuses, but the fuse box was at the rear of the dark warehouse, which made this a particularly unpleasant job at night. Still, the men ventured forth, and 10 minutes later we were able to put away the candles. I was up early this morning. Jan was already dressed. Since he had to leave at 8:30, he was upstairs eating breakfast by 8. Miep was busy getting dressed, and I found her in a vest when I came in. She wears the same kind of long underwear I do when she cycles. Margot and I threw on our clothes as well, and were upstairs earlier than usual. After a pleasant breakfast, Miep headed downstairs. It was pouring outside, and she was glad she didn't have to cycle to work. Daddy and I made the beds, and afterwards I learned 5 irregular French verbs. Quite industrious, don't you think? Margot and Peter were reading in our room, with Mushi curled up beside Margot on the divan. After my irregular French verbs, I joined them and read Beyond Sing the Woods. It's quite a beautiful book, but very unusual. I'm almost finished. Next week it's Bep's turn to spend the night. Yours, Anne. Thursday, the 29th of October, 1942. My dearest Kitty, I'm very worried. Father's ill. He's covered with spots and has a high temperature. It looks like measles. Just think, we can't even call a doctor. Mother is making him perspire in hopes of sweating out the fever. This morning, Miep told us that the furniture has been removed from the Van Daan's flat on Zuider Amstelaan. We still haven't told Mrs. Van D yet. She's been so nervenmassig, which means nervous, lately. But we don't feel like hearing her moan and groan about all the beautiful china and lovely chairs she had to leave behind. We had to abandon most of our nice things too. What's the good in grumbling about it now? Father wants me to start reading books by Hebel and other well-known German writers. I can read German fairly well by now, except I usually mumble the words instead of reading them silently to myself, but that'll pass. Father has taken the plays of Goethe and Schiller down from the big bookcase and is planning to read to me every evening. We've started off with Don Carlo. Encouraged by Father's good example, Mother pressed her prayer book into my hands. I read a few prayers in German just to be polite. They certainly sound beautiful, but they mean very little to me. Why is she making me act so religious and devout? Tomorrow we're going to light the stove for the first time. The chimney hasn't been swept in ages, so the room is bound to fill with smoke. Let's hope the thing draws. Monday, the 2nd of November, 1942. Bep stayed with us Friday evening. It was fun, but she didn't sleep very well because she'd drunk some wine. For the rest, there's nothing special to report. I had an awful headache yesterday and went to bed early. Margot was being exasperating again. This morning, I began sorting an index card file from the office because it had fallen over and got all mixed up. Before long, I was going balmy. I asked Margot and Peter to help, but they were too lazy, so I put it away. I'm not crazy enough to do it myself. And Frank. P.S. I forgot to mention the important news that I'm probably going to have my period soon. I can tell because I keep finding a whitish smear in my panties, and Mother predicted it would start soon. I can hardly wait. It's such a momentous event. Too bad I can't use sanitary towels, but you can't get them anymore, and Mummy's tampons can only be used by people who have had a baby, by women who have had a baby. And this is a comment added by Anne on the 22nd of January 1944, so just 2 years later. Well, a year and a half. I wouldn't be able to write that kind of thing anymore. Now that I'm rereading my diary after a year and a half, I'm surprised at my childish innocence. Deep down, I know I could never be that innocent again, however much I'd like to be. I can understand the mood changes and the comments written about Margot, mother and father as if I'd written them only yesterday, but I can't imagine writing so openly about other matters. It embarrasses me greatly to read the pages dealing with subjects that I remembered as being nicer than they actually were. My descriptions are so indelicate, but enough of that. I can also understand my homesickness and yearning for Mochi. The whole time I've been here, I've longed unconsciously, and at times consciously, for trust, love, and physical affection. This longing may change in intensity, but it's always there.